Hello everyone, and welcome to the English Teacher's Guide to how to write the perfect piece of descriptive writing, which is useful for your IGCSEs, the new GCSEs, or just generally anyone that wants to write a piece of descriptive writing extremely well. So, descriptive writing, in terms of the perfect mark criteria, if you're going to achieve the perfect piece of work, this is what you need to do. Always remember to plan your ideas. That's really important, and we're going to show you how to do that in a moment. You need to make sure your piece matches the purpose. So you might be asked to write for a particular genre, horror, thriller, action, that sort of thing. You need to make sure that your work encompasses that. Make sure your piece looks like the piece of writing it should do. So for example, if we're talking about any kind of language paper, if it's a letter, it needs to look like a letter, etc., etc. Use a variety of different sentence types for effect, obviously, as well. Make sure that you're using a variety of different sentence starters. Utilize a variety of complex punctuation. Again, make sure you're using that to create an intended effect. So for instance, the use of the exclamation mark in a really simple sense can show anger, can show frustration. Question marks can show this idea of uncertainty. But there's more to it than that, but you get the idea. Consider your formality. Make sure you're using different lengths of paragraphs. So particularly for descriptive writing or narrative writing, which is creative writing, that one sentence paragraph always works really well. So say for example, you're looking to produce a piece where someone feels alone. You might have a single sentence paragraph which says something like, "There was no one to help me." Spell all your complex words correctly, but don't forget to get the basics right first. And it's always better to spell the complex words wrong than to simply use simple vocabulary and get that right all the time. You'll get lower marks doing it that way. Make sure the whole text structure is effective. Again, we'll show you how to do that in a moment. Create the pieces interesting. Particularly if you're talking about a piece for your exam, there's hundreds and hundreds of pieces that an examiner has to mark. You need to make your piece stand out. And finally, you need to remember that exams are all about just showing off, really. This is your chance to show what you can do. So if you're given a football and all you do is trap the ball, doesn't matter how good you actually are, if that's the first time someone's seen you play football, they're not going to think you're amazing. If you do all your tricks and skills, people are going to think you're incredible. That's exactly what you need to be thinking about in terms of your exam mindset as well. And I think it's also important at this point to distinguish between descriptive writing and narrative writing or creative writing. Descriptive writing, which we're going to look at in a moment, is describing a scene and things going on in the scene. You almost want to imagine it to be a moving image, but in a certain moment of time, where the narrative piece is basically a story beginning, middle, and end. But how do I plan? How do I create the piece of descriptive writing? So one, if it's an exam, you always read the question carefully, making sure to underline the key parts. Then what you need to do is identify. So you'll have an image normally, or you want to create an image in your own mind. Some people might even sketch a quick image on a piece of paper. Then you want to identify 5, 6, maybe 7 aspects of the image you wish to describe. This should be a mixture of larger aspects of the image, the whole scene, for instance, or a whole person. And then you also want to zoom in. So what you might do is you might zoom in on the hairs on a character's arm, the individual blades of grass in a field. And then for each aspect, note down some vocabulary you could use in order to describe that image. But consider what kind of atmosphere you will create. So if you're wanting to create a negative feel, your vocabulary should obviously support that image. Then, place the elements in the order you want to write them about. Now, in terms of that whole text structure, it's an excellent idea to return at the end to the image you began with. And then when you're answering, use all the perfect mark skills that we were talking about. And then hopefully, once you've proofread it, it should do exactly what we're saying it should, which should be a perfect piece of descriptive writing. Now, my plan, you can see here, this would be an image, and you can see what I've done. I've numbered up essentially the order in which I'm going to use them in. And you can see number 1 is also number 9, because I'm going to go back to that same image. Now you might not have 9, but I've planned 9, so that obviously I've got everything covered. You can see here clearly as you go around the image, I've identified what I'm going to describe, and then I've got some vocabulary to go along with it. And that's exactly what you should do, and that's it. That's it. What I might do is I might note down things that I forget to do to help me get perfect marks. So I might forget to use different sentence starters or anything like that. But that's you understanding you and your work. So what does this look like as an answer? It was a glorious day. The calm waters lapped gently against the peaceful shoreline, whilst pleasant seagulls bobbed on the tranquil waves as other seabirds soared on the warm air that caressed their majestic wings. So a lovely positive image. On land, next image, this pleasant theme continued. The trees shifted lightly in the breeze, creating a soothing noise which was pleasant to the ear. Colourful flowers added to this utopian feeling by releasing gorgeous scents which filled the nostrils with the smells of delightful summer. Sitting within this image, people sat and socialised. Some lay along the sea wall, gazing up at the fluffy white clouds, trying to establish whether they saw a smiling face or a small puppy, although it didn't really matter. Others relaxed in their cafe chairs, sipping delightfully from their fresh mugs. The warm coffee, as it entered their being, revitalised their sun-beaten skin after their successful journey on their bike. Although they had arrived separately, the nature of the day created a feeling of camaraderie which had caused them to begin discussing how lucky they were to be sitting in this place and enjoying the world around them. They all agreed they would rather be here than anywhere else in the world right now. Indeed, if you took the time to lift your head from your reverie, you would notice every single face had joy etched across it. So again, notice this isn't a story as such. It's just a moment in time being described. Away from the picturesque moment in time, the sounds of passing vehicles along the Brooklyn Bridge actually seemed to add to the blissful day, as the soft rumblings of commuters mirrored the soft rumblings of the waves against the seawall. Now again, that can very easily be turned into a negative image, but notice how it's been written in a way to make it seem pleasant. The bridge's appearance, rather than disturbing the view that nature had created, almost seemed to form a beautiful link between man, who called New York home, and nature, the original owner of the terrain. This was proof that man and nature could live happily together. But all good things come to an end. There's that single sentence paragraph. Whilst trying to ascertain whether the cloud looked like his old pet dog, a man who had previously been full of warmth of the environment noticed that his fluffy white cloud had now become dark, sinister and twisted. So notice my atmosphere is changing now. He also noticed that the gorgeous smell of pollen had been replaced by the smell of death and despair. He also noticed the soothing sounds of the waves had been overcome by the terrifying sounds of screaming, anguished and desperate individuals. At that moment, all the expressions on the faces of the folks sitting outside the cafe changed from relaxed and content to contorted expressions of fear and confusion. As they followed the trail of ash that had forced the seabirds to immediately evacuate their once imperious city, now seemed like a scene in a disaster movie. They felt helpless. They felt useless, and also felt shamefully lucky at being on the safer side of the bridge. If they were on the other side of the bridge, they would have been engulfed by the harmful smoke, the screaming of emergency sirens, which could do little to hold back a tide of death and destruction. All around were people trying to contact loved ones, trying to tell them they were sorry for arguing after their spouse had taken the last dessert from the freezer, trying to tell their children that they had to go away for a while, and some were trying to contact God and plead for forgiveness. The source of this destruction, which had hit the city like a hammer hitting a glass window, was a single passenger plane which was due to take groups of happy families to holiday destinations they had longed to see. Cruelly, the hijacker, who believed was earning himself a place in heaven by murdering innocent people, had announced over the plane speakers, "We will shortly be arriving at our destination. We hope you have enjoyed your time on Earth." After hours of this continuing chaos, after hundreds of bodies have fallen to their deaths, and after billions of tears had been shed, the sounds of murder became silent, and all that could be heard was the gentle waves lapping against the sea wall, while seagulls bobbed slowly up and down in the water. Proofread our work, and that's it. So thank you very much. Try it out yourself, and please feel free to send me some examples of your works. I'd love to see what you're doing. Thanks very much. Good luck.